My name is Jacob Stoops.
And I'm Jeff Luella.
And you're listening to the Page 2 podcast.
This is our podcast about the people of the SEO industry.
We chronicle the real-life stories, experiences, challenges, and advice from some of the most amazing people in the business. In this week's episode, we talk with Chima Mmeje, content strategist, SEO copywriter, and founder of Zenith Copy. We talk about growing up in Nigeria, going to college, working at hotels, working as a bartender, landing a government job, which she still works today, why she decided to get a second job, how she became a copywriter at a content mill churning out 100,000 words per month, and how that backbreaking job led her to found her own copywriting company, Zenith Copy. We also touch on why she decided specifically to focus on SaaS and tech companies, how she's gone about developing her personal brand and establishing her presence within the SEO industry. For our core topic, we talk about topic clusters and long-form content, how to properly execute a topic cluster strategy. We share our thoughts on whether long-form content is right for all types of pages, and talk about how to use topic clusters and long-form content to sell your products and services. Finally, we answer Twitter questions of the week and award some more swag. So get your popcorn ready as we tell Chima's SEO story and have another great roundtable discussion. Hey everybody, it is Jacob Stoops and we are back with episode number 73 of the Page 2 podcast. If you don't know me, I am an SEO director at Search Discovery, and today is going to be an interesting episode because I am not being joined by Jeff. Jeff is actually on vacation, so we are going back to our roots from season 1 of the show. I did the first 25 episodes by myself. So unfortunately for the guests today, you're going to have to listen to me drone on a little bit more than I usually do, but that is okay because we have yet another amazing guest today, and we're just going to bring her on right away. So it's not just me, talking to myself. So we're going to bring her on. It's Chima Mmeje. How are you doing, Chima?
I'm fine, Jeff. Jacob. Thank you for having me. I was just about to call you Jeff.
Hey, howdy, hey. Yes, that is Jeff's thing. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's when I started this show, I feel like I was very, very comfortable, being by myself as the sole host. And now that I've had Jeff for almost 50 episodes, you kind of get used to having, a little bit of a crutch to lean on, a co-host to kind of break up the conversation. So it's going to be an interesting episode. I tend to talk a lot. Sometimes I feel like I talk over poor Jeff, even though we share the podcast. So I think this is going to give me an opportunity probably to exercise that a little bit more, so that in the last 2 episodes of the season, Jeff can come back and be ready to talk as much as he wants.
Sounds good to me.
Yes, and of course you're going to be talking quite a bit yourself. So, Chima, I did not actually introduce you from a title perspective, which I normally do, because I was focused on making sure that I was getting the pronunciation right, which, as my listeners know, I have repeatedly struggled with, admittedly, over the course of my time running this podcast, to the detriment of sometimes my guests. And I want to make sure I get that right. But you are a content strategist and SEO copywriter for Zenith Copy. That's your company, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So you should call yourself the CEO. Not immediately jump in and say you should call yourself something different. Not awkward at all.
Nah. Calling myself the CEO makes it look like I have people working under me, and I work alone. So sounds better when I say freelancer.
Absolutely. Yes. No, that is awesome. So before we dive into Chima's story, we are just going to do, like we do every week, we're going to talk about two things. So of course we want to talk about Hamlet's company, RankSense. So Hamlet Batista, I'm sure you've heard by now. If you're a new listener, you may not know, we had Hamlet Batista on our show last November, and unfortunately in January he passed away from COVID. Super unfortunate, super sad, and he meant so much to our industry. He was the pioneer in a lot of ways, and he was an amazing person to talk to, with a lot of friends and colleagues within the industry. So we've been just trying to do our best to make sure that all of the people left behind, including those at his company, are able to kind of maintain and push his mission on. And we want to send people to their website to hopefully do business with RankSense. It truly is an amazing company, and they have a really, really great value proposition. And if you don't know about their company, let me just kind of explain it to you. So if you've worked in SEO for any length of time, especially on the agency side, you will know that probably the biggest single problem when you do not have direct access to the website is getting your recommendations implemented. And that is where RankSense is really strong in terms of the way that they approach the SEO market. And the reason I say that is because this tool, it pretty much allows you to get changes implemented without developer intervention. And not only that, it helps you prove out the value of your changes before a developer would commit any of those changes to code. And it does it through something called Edge or Cloud SEO. So they work with Cloudflare. I believe that they're still kind of working behind the scenes on a relationship with Akamai. These are the biggest CDNs in the world. And what they will do is their software will latch onto your website, and it will allow you to make changes through, which is amazing. This part I find really amazing, a Google spreadsheet. So you want to update a page title, a meta description, on-page copy, on-page tag or meta tags, on other on-page elements. You want to add structured data. All of these things you can do through RankSense without having to get your developers involved. And it literally is as simple as going into a spreadsheet and entering data into the spreadsheet. And then that data will start populating on your site out on the edge, right? So it won't necessarily fix the problem at the source, but what it will do once you make the change is it's going to show you the incremental lift and value of the changes that you're making to your site, so that you can then take that information and data and take it back to your developers and say, see, this thing worked. Now let's actually build it in to the structure and the code base so that we don't have to do it out on the edge anymore. So for those of us that sometimes languish for months, and in my case, sometimes even years, waiting for recommendations to get implemented, this type of a tool is just amazing. Amazing. So definitely, if you want to learn more about it, go to ranksense.com. And of course, the other organization that we've been really promoting, this season, and will continue to do so until the end of the season, is of course United Search, and that is because kind of their mission is really near and dear to our hearts. Both Jeff and I believe in a high degree of balance in the perspectives that are being brought forth from the industry. And I would say that for far too long, the perspectives in the industry in terms of the people that are perceived as being really, really important voices have been, it's just not been balanced enough. That's probably the best way that I can explain it, right? So there are a lot of really underrepresented groups that haven't been given enough play, enough airtime, and their perspectives have not been, over the course of time, given enough credence. And that is something that United Search is working to change. It's working to help people from underrepresented groups, BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, women, and those 55 and older to have the opportunity to speak at some of the world's biggest conferences, have the opportunity to work with mentors that have been there and done that. So if you want to learn more about United Search, you can go to unitedsearch.org, or on Twitter, you can visit them at search_ united. Excellent. All right. So, Chima, you are now on the hot seat. So I guess I would ask, tell us your story. Who are you? Tell our listeners about yourself.
Okay, so I run Zenith Copy. It's a freelance SEO content website where I create content and strategy for SaaS and tech companies, but I also have clients in other verticals like financial services. And that's what I do. I started out copywriting, I think in 2017, worked with an agency, or rather a content mule in the UK, did that until 2019 when I broke out to start my own business, and I've been doing that ever since.
So we like to get pretty introspective on our podcast, and we like to go back and learn about what are people's backstories and origin stories, right? So before you started your company, what did you do before that? And even like going all the way back, I would ask, so something I haven't mentioned yet is that you live in Nigeria. So we've talked to guests on this show, of course, from North America, South America, the Asian continent, all over, Australia, Europe, the UK. We've not yet talked to somebody from Africa. So I would ask you, what's it like? Our audience is heavily skewed towards the US and the UK. So I'm not sure that people have a lot of exposure to what it might be like growing up in Africa, in your case, specifically Nigeria, and making your way, through to become somebody that is a pretty active participant in the digital marketing and SEO community.
Okay, so I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, family of 5 kids and 2 parents. So it was a very interesting childhood. Although we didn't have a lot of money, we grew up very poor, but my parents were obsessed, like totally obsessed with giving us a good education. So after university, once you finish university, it's this African thing where they kind of just, everybody just leaves you alone and you are suddenly on your own. And now you have to start making decisions. You have to fend for yourself. You have no assistance. And there I was, 20 years old, with no clue on what I was going to do with my life. I worked in a hotel for like 2 years. I was receptionist, bartender, working in the kitchen, just did all sorts of stuff. And I did that until 2014. Yeah, I worked in a hotel for 3 years. And then I met this man who was a politician, very influential. And I walked up to him with my CV and I'm like, I'm frustrated. I need a job. What can you do to help me? And then he took my CV and he helped me get a job. I still do that job to today. I'm a government research officer. I'm planning and research officer with a local government. That's like my main job. SEO is actually my second job. Yeah, most people don't know this, but I have a government job. So I started working there in 2014, but it was boring as... Oh God, it was incredibly boring. Like government jobs, you just go to the office, you sit down, you gist, you watch movies, you basically just chilling. And it was so much free time. I just needed something to do with my free time. And then I went online. I started researching computer jobs, work from home jobs, remote jobs. There were so many options, but I could write. I'd been running a kind of like hobby blog for like 7 years where I just talked about the issues we're facing in Nigeria, issues with our government. Like there's so many issues in Nigeria that it's impossible for me to get into all of them. So I used to just like vent out my frustration on my personal blog. So I'm like, okay, Chima, you can actually blog, you can write. Why don't you just find a way to make money from this skill? So one Sunday evening, I was sitting down at home, just browsing through job ads. And then I see this gig. They're looking for a remote copywriter. It's a UK company. At the time, I did not think about why a UK company would live where white people, where native English speakers are, and come to Africa to look for writers. But what they do is that they come to developing countries and they find ridiculously cheap writers to write like high quality content for them. So I joined this agency, which is actually a content mill, and I started working for them. Started out writing 1,500 words a day. By the second month, I was doing 2,000 words a day, progressed to 3,000 words a day, moved on to 4,000, and then 5,000 words a day, Monday to Friday. My schedule was like wake up in the morning at 2 a.m., right on to 5 a.m., go for a run, and then head over to my government job. Come home, work some more, and then go to bed at 8 p.m. It was brutal. I think I started developing neck pain after a while. I had to start wearing braces, neck braces, back braces. It was just a lot. But after 18 months, I started thinking of leaving because there are no good opportunities in a content mill, obviously. I went from earning $500 to earning $600 and then thinking I was making money. I joined this club on Facebook called the Copywriters Club, and that was like the life-changing moments for me. I saw this copywriter who was talking about charging $500 for a piece of blog post, and I was like, $500 for one blog post when I make $500 a month for writing 100,000 words. It was mind-blowing, insane. I took like a day off just to digest and process everything. And then I was like, okay, Chima, you've got to think of something else to do to make money, still doing the same copy. So I started interacting with more people in copywriting club. Somebody shared their rate card with me. Someone shared their contracts with me. Someone shared their proposal with me. People were really helpful. Then I joined LinkedIn. I became very active on LinkedIn. I was like, okay, LinkedIn is going to be my tool for lead generation. But what the heck am I going to post? So I started following copywriters, marketers to see what kind of content they were creating. My goal was to see what the people really resonate with. What do the successful people really talk about? I started seeing that some of them just talk nonsense. Basically, it was just generic advice that you can't really do anything with it. X those guys. But there were those that were giving like practical advice that you could take home and then implement immediately. And people would really, really get into what they were saying and resonate with that and want to work with them. Those were the kind of people that I wanted to be like. And after studying LinkedIn for like 3 months, I was like, okay, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to start using LinkedIn as a tool for lead gen. I got lucky, or maybe I was smart, I don't know. But my first post on LinkedIn, I talked about my journey and people really liked it. And I generated like 20 to 30 leads with my first post on LinkedIn. Signed my first client that same day, signed another client through a referral, and I just kept going. I was still working for the content mill. My goal was to have like at least a couple of clients before I left the content mill. Then I signed my first US client, signed my first Australian client, and it just took off from there. But I still had a problem here. The problem was that I was undervaluing myself. I was writing for maybe 0.05 word. That's like $50 for 1,000 words or $70. And I remember somebody, the first person who reached out to me, who said, when I told him that I was charging $50 for 1,000 words, and he laughed. He laughed and he said, that's ridiculous. You live in Nigeria. Why should you be charging that much? I can only pay you $15 for 1,000 words. It was the audacity and how he said it that made me think that, okay, you might be overcharging here. But I had like this internal battle with myself where I decided, okay, no, there is no way $15 for 1,000 words makes sense. You're not going from making less than $500 for 100,000 words to earning this shitty amount of money. And that's how it has always been. Having to talk myself out of gaslighting from people who say I should be charging less. Having to always understand my value, walk through that mindset, keep growing until I get to the point where I am now, charging $900 as a basic price for content. So that's kind of like my story with copywriting. I still have to always find the balance between doing SEO content and the government job so that clients don't even know that Chima has a day job or that she's combining freelancing with anything else.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, you're working a day job, which is, 40, 50, probably sometimes, I don't know. It's probably a regular
8 to 10 hours a day for the content mill.
Yeah.
10 to 12 hours a day for the content mill.
And plus your government job. So to me, that sounds like 80 to 100 hours a week. That's literally back-breaking work. You're producing 100,000 pieces of words per month. And then you take on freelance in addition to that. And you're also a parent, correct?
Yeah, I have a nephew, a 9-year-old who lives with me. He's my nephew.
Okay,
I'm his primary caregiver.
Okay. How the hell do you do that? Like, when do you sleep? That's amazing.
I sleep from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Wow. It's both amazing and it's a little sad. Like and I don't mean that in like a derogatory way, but it sucks.
I understand.
That's hard.
I understand.
And you mentioned, when you're working for this content mill, who I'm assuming, they do this to other people. You mentioned physical tolls that literally writing. I'm only thinking of the mental toll of like, what is it like to have to produce that much coherent thought and put it down on paper every day? I don't think that I could do it and still be good after a while. I think that I would start getting numb to the quality that I'm producing. So how do you not get there? And then what you mentioned, like the physical toll, like how does that begin to start taking a physical toll on you? Because that's crazy.
Yeah, like that 18 months, was it 18 months? Yeah, 18 months where I worked for that company, it was brutal. It just started with like, you start to get numb in your thumbs, and then it starts with your knuckles, and then it moves on to here, your wrists, gets to your wrist. And then from your wrist, you start to feel pain, yeah? Your elbow, where it rests on the chair. And then you start to feel pain in your neck from having to sit upright for hours. I remember the first day I had that neck pain. It was like after a year of working for that agency. And then I had to get a neck brace. And then after a while, you start to feel pain in your back because you are sitting down for 10 hours a day on a chair. And then I started wearing a back brace, a neck brace. Oh my God, I had so many aids, and then I started having migraine from looking at the screen. No matter how dull I made the screen, no matter what I do to prevent that, because I was looking at the screen for so many hours in a day, I started having migraines. And then I was also dealing with like that mental torture of the fact that there is no security in this job. Like if I get sick or if I have to take a day off, the pay is deducted from what I'm going to earn at the end of the month. I also have to think of the quality, because the quality has to be like top notch every single time you send in content. They had project managers who would look at the work, and if it's not good enough, they send it back. So these were all things I had to factor in. It was just insane. It was just insane. I still don't know how I survived those 18 months. I think I survived just because I needed the money. The poverty will give you this energy, this ability to focus and to do what needs to be done. I think that's the power of poverty. I was languishing and I just needed a way out, and this job was it.
Do you want to name who is this company? They sound awful.
Yeah, you can find them on my LinkedIn. It's like they are the company I worked with. They're on my LinkedIn page, so it's easy for anybody to see there. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying this on the surface without knowing much about the company other than what you told me.
Definitely, they are awful. They are awful because we weren't even getting paid on time. That's another thing. Like, we finished the work at the end of the month. You're supposed to get paid, and you would still have like periods where you get owed for like 2 weeks after. So you need to keep writing, because if you say you're going to stop writing, then you're only going to get paid for what you create. So you would be getting owed, and you still have to keep writing content. Like, you're basically like a machine. There was a month where they owed us for 2 months, and I had to keep writing for 2 months without pay on that bottom feeder income. So It was brutal. I remember this particular day, that was in 2019 January, when the owner of the company was owing so many people, and he had gone on holiday to Scotland with his family to a zoo, one of these theme parks, and he was sending me pictures of him and his family at the theme parks, and he was owing people salaries, and yet he was going on holiday, and he had the audacity to be sending me pictures, and I just could not fathom how somebody could be so cold and so cruel. But this is the reality for people in developing countries.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. And so the company, as I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, is Daily Post Copywriting.
Yeah, so definitely.
I'm just gonna say this: fuck you, Daily Post Copywriting. That's awful, and you should be shut down. Like, that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. So, fuck you. If you ever listen to this.
He won't. He doesn't. He's like isolated from all of this, so he doesn't listen to anything.
Yeah. Well, maybe somebody will send this his way. He can go find some place to, I don't know what, but that's just really, that's really awful. And I think it, maybe it speaks to, a larger issue, when it comes to, and we talked a little bit about this with Alina Benny, who is, she's from India. And, as a person from the US, and I believe that there's also this bias in the UK, when you hear the word, we're going to outsource to India, the implicit bias is that one, it's going to cost less, and two, there's likely going to be a reduction in quality, if for nothing else, because of the language barrier, but more likely because of a combination of that, as well as the conditions that the people are working in, as well as maybe not necessarily being familiar in the way that they should, that an in-country copywriter might be. But I'm going to ask you, what has your experience been? You shared one story with respect to the sorts of bias that you might be getting as you're now beginning to get job offers, work offers, contracts, clients, those types of things. Have you run up against any bias because of where you're at?
Yeah, definitely. I remember the first US-based client I got, and when we're on the first call, he asked, after we'd spoken for 30 minutes, he asked me, can you speak English? Like, we had been speaking for 30 minutes, conversing in English language, just as you and I are talking right now, Jacob. And just imagine, after this conversation, you end the call with, can you speak English? Like, am I even speaking Arabic or German all of this time? I don't understand. Those are the kind of things that I get. Like, I've seen people who thought I was white because of the kind of copy I wrote on LinkedIn. Like, I don't know, people can be very, very oblivious. So they see the copy I'm writing, they reach out on my email, and then they jump on the call, and then they realize that I'm Black and I live in Africa. And immediately you can just see that it's over. Like, they're no longer interested. I've had people who, once I told them I was Nigerian, then they start talking about Nigerian scammers, Nigerian prince, and all that. And that's the end. I've had people who had questioned some of the samples I've sent to them in my portfolio, and they're like, did you really write this? Wow, this is really good for an African writer. I've had people who have asked me, wow, you're in SEO. That's smart. Like, you're an African and you're in SEO. You've really got the chops then. Like, it sounds strange to them that I'm African and I'm Black and I'm in SEO, because they think that SEO is for smart people and I cannot be any of those things. Initially, I did not know how to respond to those things. But as I started to find myself more, I became more open about all of these biases, and I started talking about it more, and it just kind of fizzled out from there, because people started becoming more aware that it's not okay to say this, or it's not okay to say this. So definitely I've dealt with a ton of bias. It's hard doing business when you live in a developing country, because you have to prove to people that you can speak English, that you can write English, that you can communicate with their audience, and that they should pay you just as much as they are paying copywriters who live in developed countries.
Yeah, I think that is amazing perspective, I think, to share. And from the US side, unless you are proactively going to research what's going on in Africa, the most that you typically hear, the average American, I would say, is just how impoverished it is. And that's what you get unless you're going to do research. So I think that a lot of the bias comes from that, and comes from, I think, the lack of what we see, which I think to some degree might almost dehumanize people to some degree from Africa, as if they're not capable of equal things, or as if they're not, as if there aren't people within that group that are really smart. And of course, just like us, there are people probably within that group that are on the other end of the spectrum as well. And you're just people. It's no different than over here. There are really smart and really stupid people over here. And I think it's an interesting point that you bring up, especially now that we're deep into the pandemic. with COVID, and remote work is, I think, way more acceptable than it was 12 months ago, because companies that were old school, that were used to in office and thought that that was the only way that you could operate, are now probably being open to the idea that no, you don't. There's something that is missed in an office environment, but you can operate remote. So what does where somebody live have to do with how much they get paid, right? I mean, other than the cost of living. Okay, I'm in Ohio in the United States. Of course, if I move to Los Angeles, the cost of living is going to be higher, right? But that has to do with living, not what you get paid for a service that you provide. So
exactly,
if you're providing a service and the work that you're doing is as high quality as somebody in country, then I don't understand what being from Nigeria has to do with it. And I'm glad you take that position. You should value your work. I would tell that to anybody, and you don't need me to tell that to you, but I'm going to say it anyway. So yeah, I just find it crazy.
Yeah, that's the reality of the world we live in. There are always going to be people who want to exploit others. So hard world we live in.
Yeah. Yes, it is. So, I want to transition, because we have talked to a lot of people that come at SEO from the copywriting side, and my experience with copywriters has been that not all SEOs are copywriters, and not all copywriters are SEOs, right? So, how did you once you started copywriting, discover SEO as a thing that you really enjoyed doing?
Okay, so it just came naturally for me, to be honest. Like when I was working for the content mill, like I said, the content I always enjoy writing most was always content around SEO, digital marketing, tech, SaaS. So when I decided to freelance, it was bringing all of that together, content, SEO, and writing for SaaS and tech companies. And I just realized that even without even knowing what topic clustering was or keyword clustering was, I already started creating that as a way of creating content on my own blog. And then as I started to learn more, then it hit me that, okay, this is the content that you enjoy writing the most. This is the content that doesn't seem like hard work. This is the content that you wake up, you do, and it feels rewarding. And that was how I started removing things from my services. I started removing product copy, landing pages, website copy, and I now became like specialized in just content SEO. So I'm not really SEO copywriter. I'm not really doing SEO copywriting. I'm more like content SEO, which means that I'm creating SEO content like long form pieces to help clients educate their audience and rank for keywords and topics that they want to own. And then on the strategy side, I'm building out that cluster so that they're not just creating content willy-nilly. They are creating content based on data and based on what their audience wants to see. So it's still SEO, but it's SEO for the user. And I enjoy that stuff. I enjoy looking at the data. I enjoy turning it into content. I enjoy taking that strategy and breaking it down into briefs. I just really enjoy that whole process of doing content SEO. It just comes naturally for me. I can look at a keyword, look at my client's website, and then tell how much work needs to go into before I even start to do all of the research. So I think that stuff has to come naturally to you, or you're just going to struggle if you decide to do SEO.
And then what made you, because there are a lot of ways you can go in the SEO world, a lot of types of clients you can take on, and obviously working for the content mill, you probably took on just about every different type of client under the sun. Yeah. What made you really center in on SaaS companies as well as tech-oriented companies as kind of your ideal client?
Okay, first of all, it's because there is like a shit ton of SaaS companies out there. Like every day there's a new SaaS company who is getting funded. I'm always looking for the easiest way out. On LinkedIn, on Twitter, I'm always talking about how I'm the laziest motherfucker on planet Earth. So in view of that, I'm always asking myself, what is going to be the easiest way for you to get shit done and get paid the most money? A ton of SaaS and tech companies, cool. That just checked the box for me. Every other place I could think of, The market is kind of very, very like small. And if the market is small, then you have more freelancers fighting for like few clients. And because I already have that disadvantage of living in Africa, then I don't want that. I want something with a very big market where I can just go in, take my share of the pie, and just do it easily. So SaaS and tech was just easy for me because this was the content I'd already been doing. I already had samples from my portfolio from working in the content mill that I could show to clients. And from there, it just became easier. Most of the friends I had in the freelance community were also SaaS and tech copywriters. So they were sending leads my way. So it was just easy. It was just the easiest thing for me to do. Finally, I enjoyed like looking at something that's supposed to be complex and figuring out the easiest way to break it down so that someone who is not a techie or who doesn't like understand geek language can look at this content and go like, oh, so this is what this means.
It's interesting. I feel like it's an interesting way that you describe yourself because good God, if you've worked 100 hours a week and call yourself lazy, I don't know what to call myself. I guess I'm like doubly lazy. So good Lord, I don't know how you can, do that.
That's why I call myself lazy, because I'm intentional about being lazy. I don't work that long hours anymore. So my life mission going forward is to work the least hours while making the most money. I'm done with that lifestyle.
That sounds like the way to go. You're efficient, very efficient. That reminds me a lot of Hamlet. Very efficient, very, very efficient. So you've been, really, I feel like, over the course of maybe the last couple of months, years, really working on developing your personal brand. And I think the interesting thing about this podcast is, maybe at the beginning we had a set plan, and I'm not going to lie, like there is a list that Jeff and I compile of people that we'd like to talk to. That list constantly grows and evolves, and really where our interviews come from, it's no pun intended, it's quite organic. So the reason I say that is because as we bump into people through our social media interactions that we find to be interesting, that's when we reach out and bring people on the show. So it's really kind of organic. And that's how, as you've been developing your personal brand, that's how I noticed you to begin with, and, dug into your background and said, I think that Chima would be somebody that would bring an interesting perspective to our show. So on the other side, what has it been like developing your personal brand and becoming kind of a more well-known entity within the industry?
Yeah, like that's very interesting, because I feel like this is what sets me apart from the average freelancer who is Black or who is living in Africa. I have a personal brand that people know, and these days when people come to me, they expect to pay top dollar for content. And that happened because I've been very careful with the way that I've developed my brand. I started with LinkedIn. It started with being intentional with the people I was connecting with. Who did I want to impress? I wanted to impress content marketers, people who are in SEO, and people I considered peers in the freelance community. Connecting with these people, creating content that they found valuable, that solved problems for them, and then engaging with the content that they were creating. Then going to their inboxes and carrying on that conversation, not to ask for work, but just to get to know them better. So by developing this organic relationship that was not focused on give me work, but more like I like you as a person and I want to get to know you better, then it just became easier for people to start taking note of me, people to start rooting for me, and then start recommending me and saying, okay, hey, you're looking for a guest on your podcast, you're looking for your guest on your blog, you should reach out to Chima. And then by December, I started moving over to Twitter. I think that's when a lot of great stuff started happening. Twitter is really good. It's where I met you. It's where I've met a lot of amazing SEO people. And then I brought that funny side that I have, where I talk about fat, I talk about poop, I swear like a motherfucker. I started bringing that side over to Twitter because I feel like most SEOs are boring. Sorry about that. They're boring. We're just stiff-necked and we just don't let go. So I just want to do something different from all of that, but still retaining my personal brand. And people really resonate with that. People resonate when I hosted SEO chat. And then first question I asked was, where's the weirdest place you've ever farted and what happened? People resonate with when I'm telling weird stories about not wearing pants to a Zoom meeting and then having to turn the computer away and then jumping in my seat so that the clients can't see that I'm not wearing pants. People resonate when I'm talking about the fact that I had to go to the toilet to poop during a Zoom meeting and the clients could hear me in the toilet doing my business. So it's all of this stuff that is funny, but makes me human, that makes people really, really get to know me, because people don't connect with brands, they connect with human beings. And the funnier you are, the more personable you are, the more vulnerable you are, the easier it is for them to want to just come into your circle and feel that energy. So that has been my personal brand: being funny, being human, being vulnerable, and sharing tips that people can just go apply as it relates to content and SEO.
Yeah, I think it is. There's something about seeing somebody be very authentic that is very intriguing and compelling. And I'm not going to lie, I'm probably guilty of being very boring on social media. It's not that I feel like I'm a super boring person, although I might be kind of a boring person. But I very intentionally keep it very conservative, I would say, on my social media, more because I just, I don't want to get into any potential, and I'm not saying that you're going to risk getting into any potential future headaches, but more that I don't even want to give myself a chance to get into any sorts of headaches. So I'm boring, leaning towards bringing a lot of positivity. You'll rarely see me, unless it's about my sports teams, bringing negativity. But let's be honest, poop and farts and all of those things in my personal life, I think are hilarious. And I teach that to my kids, think it's hilarious. So it's very well known, and my family is known for being very open about that stuff. So it cracks me up. So yes, I'm right with you. And just to confirm, everybody on this particular interview wearing pants. So very, very important, very important. So what challenges, as you've been breaking into content and SEO Twitter, if any, have you run into?
Honestly, none. I think I do social media and networking so well that it comes naturally to me. When I joined LinkedIn, the biggest mistake I would say I made was code messaging. Code messaging just puts this barrier between you and someone you're trying to impress if they don't get it. And then it's going to be the impression that they have of you going forward. So if I was to go back and start again, I would never have sent a single code message. But I wouldn't consider that a challenge. I would consider that a learning curve. Regarding challenges, I would say none, none, absolutely none. I think I have done everything the way I've always wanted to do it. I have grown the way I wanted to grow. I have been in charge of every single process. So it's been amazing. I'm going at the pace I want to grow. So no challenges at all, none whatsoever.
That's awesome. No, that is really good to hear. And I think this is a good transition. So I want to get into, and I did it again. I forgot to introduce the core topic of the day, but you touched on it a little bit earlier. So what we're going to dig into is topic clusters and content strategy and how they kind of play together. So. Okay. For our audience, can you describe what is a topic cluster?
Okay, so a topic cluster is a way for brands to, rather than just doing keyword research or keyword clustering, it's a way for you to own the topic. So you don't just rank for one keyword, you rank for as many keywords as possible relating to that topic. So rather than ranking for, let me just think of a word off the top of my head. Ranking for mobile, for just what is a mobile phone, you'll be ranking for so many other keywords around mobile phones, like where to buy a mobile phone, types of mobile phones under 500, and all those keywords. You get to own the topic. So when people search for anything related to that topic, you are coming up on page one. That's what a topic cluster does. It's also a way for brands to, guide the user from the point when they enter the funnel at asking what is or how to, even past the point of purchase when they've already bought a product.
So you specialize also on long form content, right? And when I think of topic clusters, I think of it in the lens of it's usually present in some sort of a knowledge hub, knowledge based, and it's sometimes tertiary to the services or products that a company sells, but it's a way to get people in either high up in the funnel, maybe in the middle of the funnel, sometimes post-purchase. I guess my question is a couple of things. So from a long form content perspective, is that the way you see it? Are topic clusters usually like aligning to needing long form content? And how do you, I guess, pull it back to what a company sells or provides?
Okay, so because I'm a long form content writer, I'm always looking for ways to tie in long form content with topic clusters. When a client jumps on a call and they're like, they need a piece of blog post, I try to educate them on the fact that you can't rank by one piece of blog post. You need to have like several content pieces interlinking properly for you to optimize your chance of ranking for a competitive keyword. Now that leads to them saying, okay, let's get the topic cluster done. In building the topic cluster, I'm considering two things: what the client wants to be known for and what people already think of when they see that client's website. So that's stage one, keyword clustering, and second stage, user journey. So the first cluster, if they just want something small, is keyword clustering. But if they want something more detailed, then we really start to dig deep into the user journey. Where's the break-off point between top of the funnel and middle of the funnel? Okay, the biggest break-off point is middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel. What kind of content are we supposed to create to prevent that break-off point? Regarding service pages come along at the bottom of the funnel because the intent for service pages is to get them to buy. So you would have those kind of pages at the bottom of the funnel. And I don't even like to include those in topic clusters because I like to keep topic clusters as educational as possible and then reserve landing pages or case studies for bottom of the funnel, but always with an intent to educate before sell. So when I'm building topic clusters, for the most part, the clients I work with already have those service pages. They already have buy pages and all those product pages. What they need is content to connect the gap between those service pages that they have and where the user is in their journey. So tying back to what you're saying, it's not really about service pages, because service pages, you most times you already have that when you're building out your websites. You have it as a core of your website pages. It's already there. It's not going to be included in the cluster. What you're going to have in the cluster is top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and then bottom of the funnel, like case studies, like use cases and all that type of content. And then landing pages, comparison pages. Those are the kind of stuff you're going to have. And then you're going to link all of these pages back to those service pages, so that every piece of traffic, everybody who's coming in and reading those content has an opportunity to go back to your service pages and then see what it is you really do and how to, will I say, buy from you or whatever.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that as it stands with Google today, with a lot of the SaaS companies that I'm working with, the services that they provide and some of the a lot of the high-end keywords that describe their services, when you actually go and look at the rankings, the types of information that is being pulled in tends to be a mix of aggregators. So people talking about the best companies at whatever that particular thing is, as well as like very high funnel, long form content, like what is X. And it drives me a little bit crazy because it's really difficult sometimes on those long form pages to do what you need to do to sell right away. So that kind of leads into going back because you want the page that's going to sell to be the one ranking. So you almost feel like you have to build this Frankenstein of a page, I'll just call it, where it is a mix and a balance of content that talks about the product, but content that also is there to answer those very high level informational types of questions. And it feels so, when you're doing it, sometimes it works. It feels so unnatural. Unnatural is probably the best word for it, but Google rewards, the informational, high funnel, long form content. But sometimes that content, it just doesn't sell, no matter how much you link it back. So how do you, I don't know, how, as somebody that does that for a living, how do you think about that?
Okay, I remember working with this Australian client. He's a digital marketer. I learned a lot from him. And he was the person that taught me how to insert value proposition when writing long form content. So what most companies do is that I don't know why they do this, but they just want to educate. And a lot of them don't even mention what they do. Like there's no tie-in between educating and mentioning your brand. When I'm writing long form content, there's always going to be a value proposition. What is the thing we're going to sell on this page? What is going to be the call to action at the end of this page? We're writing to educate, but at the same time, I'm also looking for opportunities to insert the client's value proposition. So for instance, I was writing for this brand called Remitly. They are a financial services company, similar to TransferWise, Western Union, and that kind of stuff. So we're writing content on how people can send money back home to Brazil for kids, maybe for their kids' education, maybe for loved ones who are sick and all that. But the tie-in is that if you need to send money back home, you can use Remitly to send money home to your family. We're giving them the information on what you need to be doing if you want to send money home. We're telling them, okay, this is how Brazil's educational system works. This is how healthcare works in Brazil. This is what you should know if you're moving to Brazil. But we're also finding that place where we can insert the value proposition of, okay, you're going to Brazil on holiday, you run out of cash, you can use Remitly to get money to wherever you are in Brazil so that you always have cash on hand. You're moving to Brazil or you're working remotely for a company in the US, but you live in Brazil. This is what you need to do to get set up for taxes. This is what you need to do to set up properly as a remote worker. But this is how you need to get paid using my client services. So there's always the opportunity for you to tie in what a brand does. Let me give you a more recent example. I wrote a content last week for a SaaS company called GoLinks. Now, what's unique about this company is that their audience already defines them as a URL shortening tool, but they don't have any piece of content on their website around URL shortening because they don't want to be associated with that keyword. They wanted to stand apart from that keyword. And I told them that you need to own this keyword because everybody already calls you a URL shortening tool. What we're doing is that when I'm writing a resource like what is a URL shortener, I'm also talking about how GoLinks help them shorten links, how GoLinks help them to keep their website secure. Basically, all of the unique things that my client does that other URL shortening tools are not doing. Now, I come down to a part that talks about security. And then I'm like, okay, all the other tools like TinyURL and the rest of them are public facing, which means that anybody, even a hacker, can go in there and create a short URL. But my client only does internal URLs, which means that only teammates can create URL and nobody from outside can see what you're creating, making it very secure. Do you see how I'm tying in their value proposition in this long form piece of content that says, what is a URL shortener? I also have a subhead in India that says, is GoLink the same as brand X? Brand X is going to be the biggest competitor. And then I'm explaining how my client is different, what makes them unique, what makes them stand out from brand X, so that people can have that aha moment where it hits them that, okay, while most URL shortening to do this generic function, my client takes it one step further in these unique aspects. So they come away understanding what a URL shortener is, but they also have that residual knowledge of how my client performs URL shortening differently and better from all the other competitors. That is something that long form content can do for you. But again, it requires working with an expert who understands how to insert that value proposition without making it look unnatural, like you said, but also while educating the user so that they don't feel sold to, but they feel educated, but without even knowing that they are now thinking of this brand as the right and ultimate choice for them when they need that solution.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent way to think about it and to position it, which brings me kind of to another side of the discussion, and that's from the copyright, from the perspective of the copywriter. And I'll kind of give you a synopsis of what I run into pretty often. I think it's a pretty common problem in the industry, right? So as a copywriter, not you, but many tend to work off of a word count based on how many words am I going to produce for you. So when I deal with clients that either are working through a third-party copywriter or who have an in-house copywriting team, sometimes they have a strategy that looks a lot like this. We are going to produce 8 posts a month, 200 words per post. And my first question to them is, why 8? Why 200 words? What's behind that? And a lot of times it is based on budget that the client might have to pay for whatever the word count is that they feel like they arbitrarily need. When I got to startups.com, before I worked at Search Discovery, that's what they were doing. They were working with a copywriter, and the copywriter at that point in time was not very well versed in organic search and kind of how you have to go about it. So they were mass producing content as fast as they could get it out. They had an arbitrary threshold, and they really, when I asked them, I said, "What's the reason for this threshold? 500 words. Why?" No reason. No reason at all. It's just we figured that's a good amount of words and that's what we can pay. So I said, hold on. All right, let's back up. And I've done this with many companies. So if you want to perform well organically, well, some posts maybe need to be 400 words. Some may need to be 4,000. And a lot of it depends on what Google is rewarding, what type of content other people are producing. And it's not necessarily to say that word count is the only factor in play, but when you go and look at search results, it's a data point that you should collect just to get an understanding of the depth that other people are going into. So when you are trying to rank in a SERP where the average word count is 2,000 or 3,000 words, and you're bringing your 200 word article to the party, you don't stand a chance. So I'm super against setting arbitrary word count and content production standards. And I'm more on, a custom word count per post. The problem that presents is a different problem, is it makes it really hard on a month-to-month basis to scope the cost, of course, of what the content writer is going to be producing, because each post may need a different level of support. And it, of course, makes it hard for them also to schedule work. So now I'm going to bring you in to offer your perspective as somebody that does that every day.
Okay, so this is another thing that building a topic cluster does, because it also works as a content calendar. For each topic in the cluster, I do the research. I use tools like Phrase, SEMrush, and Surfer to look at what is ranking. And then these tools can just give me like a bird's eye view of how long each of the content pieces on page 1 are for that particular keyword. And then they can aggregate all of that and show me an average word count and say, okay, this is how long your content needs to be to beat out these other guys based on word counts. Now, I don't charge for word count. I charge in ranges. So I have a word count of 1,500 words to 1,900 words. And then I'm going to write within that range so that I'm writing the best piece of content. I always try to go above what everybody else is doing in terms of word counts so that my content is longer, but it's also more educational, more informative. I'm trying to include more questions that people are asking just to make it as beefy as possible. So with a topic cluster, the client can see that, okay, the first content piece is 3,500 or 3,000 to 3,500 words. Second one is around 2,500 to 3,000. Third one is 1,500 to 1,900. And then they can plan for that and say, how much is it going to cost us to write these 10 pieces of content if we're outsourcing to copywriters? If we're going to do this every month, then they can build the cluster ahead early and then plan for it every quarter. Okay, second quarter, April to this, how many pieces of content are we creating? How long is it content going to be? How much is it going to cost? And that actually helps them plan. Personally, I don't write content under 1,500 words. If you want me to write under 1,500 words, I'm going to charge you the same thing I'm charging for writing long form content. So that's working against you. But for these clients, where there is a need to create shorter content, like sometimes the word count doesn't even have to more than 1,200, 1,300, or 1,000 words. I put that in there and they can find someone to write that piece of content. The word count is determined based on what everybody else is doing, because you want to stay competitive on quality and on word count, but you also don't want to give your writers precise word count and say write 500 words or write 1,000 words, because the mind doesn't work that way. The words that you need to put on the page do not work that range. So it's always better when you're writing in ranges and you're saying, okay, this article needs to be 1,000 words to 1,200 words, or 1,500 words to 1,900 words, so that in between that bracket, they are writing the best content possible. But all of this is coming from that topic cluster, which also works as a content calendar, like I said. And if they plan ahead, then they have an idea of how much it's going to cost month by month.
And just for those SEOs, that are ready to get out their pitchforks because we're talking too much about word count, from a professional copywriter, should you add more words just for the sake of adding more words for SEO?
Okay, this is hard because the truth is that longer form always performs better. The stats is there. I think I made a post about this on LinkedIn that supports that longer form always ranks better. You have people like Neil Patel, you have people like HubSpot. All of these guys always create long form content, but you should never, ever write long form content just for the sake of SEO. That's just bullshit. Write content that as long as it needs to be to rank, but first of all, to educate the reader. The moment you've finished writing and you feel like you've done a good job of educating the reader, that is where the post ends. Anything else just detracts, and then it's just long for the sake of being long, and then you might even start to have a high bounce rate, and which Google is going to interpret as a lack of engagement, and that's also going to affect your ranking. So write it as long as it needs to be to educate the reader. You educate the reader, you can also do the same job of optimizing that content to rank on SEO. I have content pieces that are 1,500 words ranking on page 1. It's not about word count, it's about how long does this content needs to be to educate the reader.
So you heard it there, adding words for words' sake, while long form does tend to perform better, is bullshit. I agree with that. All right. So before we move on to Twitter questions of the week, any parting thoughts on topic clusters, long form content, copywriting, content strategy?
Yeah, I think the thing I always tell people to do is that don't obsess over keyword data like monthly searches. I think that's something people tend to do a lot. They just look at monthly searches and they're like, if it doesn't have anybody searching for it, then I'm not going to create that content. But for me, the best performing pieces I have on my website don't even have keyword volume. I write these content pieces based on what people want to see. And that should be what drives your content strategy. What does your audience need to see to convert? What problems do you want to be solving for them? Keyword volume or not, create that piece of content.
Absolutely. And as SEOs, we do tend to follow the search volume. I'm not going to lie. I've probably been guilty of that from time to time. Excellent. All right. So let's move on to Twitter questions of the week. And this has been an excellent segment for us. It is definitely a segment that we enjoy. I enjoy awarding swag, although I will say that since I've gone on vacation, I'm a little bit behind with reaching out to people. So for all of you that have won, I haven't forgotten about you. You will get your swag. I will reach out and make sure that if you've asked a question and you've been declared the winner, you will get some Page 2 podcast merchandise. The only thing that I would ask for the winners is we really like to see people taking pictures with our swag. We've started to get people to do that. I find it a little funny that we've had to ask on many occasions for people to do that, but it is what it is. So I'm going to ask whoever wins. We would love it. We would love it. We do not require it, but we would love it. for you to take a picture with your swag and tag us on Twitter. It's pretty awesome to see your hard work, be hanging around out there with other people. So pretty cool. All right. So we have 4 questions today. And our first and I'm just going to let you know, Chima, when we're going to go through the questions, you'll answer them, and you are also going to get to pick the winner. So that is an important component. Sometimes it surprises the guests, and I'm just going to make sure as you're going through this, think about who asked the best question.
Okay.
All right, first question from Writer Juliet at @WriterJuliet_ on Twitter. How do you gather topic cluster ideas for a particular brand? And do you ever have to pitch the topic cluster approach for SEO to your clients? If yes, how do you do that?
That's a very good question. Okay, so the first thing I do when I'm building topic clusters is competitive research. That's like the shortcut to take. You want to see what is my competitor doing that's working for them. I get all of that data, and then I move over to keyword clustering, take all of that data, move over to asking sales and customer facing team, what kind of questions are you getting around this topic? Get all of that in an Excel spreadsheet. And then the final step is where I kind of brainstorm by putting myself in the customer's shoe and asking myself, what kind of questions would they be asking moving from top of the funnel to middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, and post-purchase? There's a lot of really good insights in this section. I take all of those questions that I get, put them in the Excel spreadsheet, and then I use tool like Bozumo to see what is trending around that keyword or topic, add that to the keyword data, start to trim the list down, go over the final topics with the client, and then whatever comes out of that becomes the topic cluster content. Now, regarding offering this as a service, because like I said, when I was speaking on the Agency Ahead podcast, it's not something that comes up naturally. It's something I have to upsell clients on or prospect on. And it's actually pretty easy to do. Most of the times people come to me and say, I want a piece of blog post, and they expect it to rank right off the bat. So I have to show them and say, this piece of blog post is not going to rank 4,000 words. I don't care how long it's going to be. You're not going to rank for a keyword that has 3,000 monthly searches with one piece of blog post, where you have people who have already built a cluster around this keyword. So I open my Zoom sharing screen. I show them a topic cluster I've designed for a client, the keywords in there, the topics in there, and then I show them how it has helped this client to rank for multiple keywords around that topic. Once I can allow them or enable them to visualize what the result is going to be like, or what the topic cluster looks like, they just want it. And something that really sells the topic cluster for me is adding content briefs. So the topic cluster itself is just data. The content brief is what really makes the topic cluster tick, because you can take those briefs and give to your writers if you decide that Chima is too expensive for you. So once they see an example of that brief, they're just kind of like, oh my God, this is incredible. I want this. It's done for, it has meta description, it has word count, it has everything that they're going to need to do on page SEO, everything they're going to need to give to the writer. It's kind of like a done for you stuff. And if there's one thing I've seen with clients, they want ease. I sell them on the ease of creating content strategy with the topic cluster. Once they get that, it's just going from there, building the cluster, and then they want me to write the content for them. So selling them on the cluster it starts with them asking that they want a piece of content, and then saying you can't rank with one piece of content. This is what you need to be doing to rank. Sharing my screen with them, and then helping them to visualize the results.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of briefs. Question number 2 comes from Jonas Sickler at Jonas Sickler on Twitter. What do you love most about SEO writing?
I would say, I think I like creating briefs a lot. Like because a good brief, I feel like it's like 90% of the job. Writing is just 10% for me. That brief is what really makes me realize that, okay, this is actually going to do well. So the brief, doing the research, all the work that goes into the writing itself is what I enjoy more than the actual writing.
Okay, moving on to question number 3 from former guest and frequent question asker, Mr. Mark Alves at Mark Alves on Twitter. Everyone gripes about Zoom fatigue, but you pulled off a series of remote, in-depth, one-on-one conversations in March. Judging by the screenshots, everyone looked delighted. How did you pull this off, and how does this skill give you an edge at SEO?
Okay, can you repeat that question?
Sure can. So from Mark Alves, everyone gripes about Zoom fatigue, but you pulled off a series of remote, in-depth, one-on-one conversations in March. Judging by the screenshots, everyone looked delighted. How did you pull this off, and how does this skill give you an edge at SEO?
Okay, number one, it doesn't give me an edge in SEO. I do it because, like I said, I think building relationships is very important. It's at the core of who I am as a person and what I've built my brand around. I jump on call with all of these SEO professionals because social media is not enough. We're just communicating with people. We're not seeing them. It just seems kind of distant. So I want the people that I speak to also be people that I have seen. And that's why I do this. But mostly, I don't have Zoom fatigue because I like looking at my face. I have a very nice face. I'm on Zoom calls and I'm spending half attention looking at the client or whoever I'm talking to. And then the other half, I'm like, oh my God, damn, you look good. And all that looking at my face stuff makes me really enjoy Zoom. So I never ever get Zoom fatigue because I like my face. I like looking at it. I enjoy being on video. I like the sound of my own voice. I'm funny. It just makes it easy to have those conversations. But there's an SEO edge in the sense that once you've spoken to people, it's different. It's like they know you. They kind of become allies. They kind of become loyalists. And when there's somebody who needs your service, you're the first person who is top of mind for them because they kind of feel loyal to you. So I won't say it gives me an SEO edge, but it helps me to build better relationships with people in the SEO community.
And I can say from experience that nobody is bringing business to Jeff or I because of our faces. We've got faces for radio. All right, 4th question from UC Nwancho. Forgive me in advance if I mispronounced your name, but I did my best. At Blackie_cute on Twitter. All my freelance writing life, I've only written contents for my clients as per their specifications, and it has been great so far. The problem is my top client wants me to step up. He gave me a task without any particular specifications. His instruction was to do whatever I can to get the copy to rank as number 1 on Google and get people to buy his products. What should I do? Okay,
let me start by breaking down with the fact that people pay more for content when there's an edge. Like you need to be doing something that other people are not doing for them to pay more for that piece of content. And for me, that includes giving them the brief, doing the keyword research, adding royalty-free images or whatever it is I'm doing for clients and make them pay what I charge. Secondly, that sounds like a very shitty client. If you are listening to this, I think you need to let that client go. It's not possible for a client to tell me, Chima, I need a piece of content without giving me instructions. Like there's got to be a goal for that content. What do you want to achieve with this content? Who is the target audience? There's just got to be like some sort of instruction. Anybody who is telling you to just go write content that is going to work on page 1. Number 2, you can't even guarantee results. Rule of SEO, never ever guarantee number 1 position on Google. That's a red flag right there. It seems like you have a bad client situation. Maybe you need to educate them and have a proper structure or a proper onboarding process of what happens when you sign on a client. Okay, this is a form to fill that says, this is the guidelines, this is the goals for the content. I'm going to create the content brief based on this keyword. You approve it, I get writing, but I'm not guaranteeing results. Nobody should ever guarantee results. If they want you to guarantee results, that means they're holding you liable if that content doesn't rank. And there's 1,001 things beyond the content itself that goes into ranking. Are they promoting that piece of content? Do they have a content distribution plan? That's not something you're doing for them. That's something they have to do for themselves. Are they building links? All this stuff happens past content. there's all of this background work that people don't even realize that goes into creating SEO content that ranks. And I'm always very clear with my clients. I'm telling them, I'm creating this piece of content for you, but I hope you have a content strategy, a content distribution plan. I hope you have a plan to build links to this content so that you are giving the content the best chance to go on page one. And not everything you create is going to go on page one. Not even HubSpot. I don't know any brand that can claim that every piece of content they've written ended up on page one. So this client is setting unrealistic expectations. They're setting you up for failure. It's not about you stepping up. It's about them trying to it's just basically about them setting unrealistic expectations on you. You need to have a conversation with your client on what the goals of the content is and what expectations should be that does not involve you guaranteeing page one rankings.
Not just page one, position one.
Yes,
page one.
Position.
Yeah,
imagine position one.
Yeah,
insane.
And part of me wonders what keyword they want to
probably going to be something very competitive. Judging by the way they're speaking.
And you took all the words right out of my mouth because I was like going to wait until you finished and then add on to that how unrealistic I thought that was. And even though like they you see that this may be your top client in terms of like maybe what they pay you. But in this particular case, Chima's right. They're setting you up for failure. So you probably need to level set with them, not necessarily saying that you should get rid of your client because I don't know what the business relationship with, I don't know what the past relationship is with them, but sounds like an unreasonable client. That's not a reasonable request. So
yeah, definitely.
That is what it is. All right, so let's pick a winner. Who's the winner of the swag?
Yeah, the first question was amazing. So that's the winner.
All right, writer Juliet.
Yes.
We are going to be reaching out to you. I'm gonna assume your name's Juliet. We're gonna connect with you, and we are going to work together to figure out which of our swag you would like. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, we've got coasters, both wood and laser. Here's our wood coaster, which I'm sure everybody has seen. So we'll reach out and we will get you hooked up with some Page 2 podcast swag. All right, let's close the episode. So Chima, we like to ask all of our guests one final question. So imagine a person is just getting into SEO this year. Is their first year. It's their first day. What advice would you give them?
Okay, so SEO is really, really big and broad and wide and so overwhelming when you're just starting out. Our advice is to pick a niche as quickly as possible. Find a niche and settle in there. Do not try to be this generalist SEO who is doing on page, tech SEO, who's just trying to do everything. It's overwhelming. There's something new about SEO coming out every day that if you don't have a niche, then you're always going to feel like you're behind. And it's going to affect your confidence level. It's going to affect the work that you do. But the moment you pick a niche and you settle in there, maybe you're doing just tech SEO, maybe you're doing on-page content SEO like I am, or you just pick one part of SEO, then you can really own it. And you can become the authority for that. You become the person that people think of when they're looking for that particular SEO skill. So pick a niche as soon as possible and just stay there.
Excellent advice. So Chima, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Chima Mmeje. You can find me on LinkedIn with my name also, Chima Mmeje, or my website, zenithcopy.com.
Yes, I encourage everybody, if you have copywriting needs, go check out her website. Sounds like you're doing some really, really amazing work. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for battling through our internet and technology issues on the front end.
Sure.
Listeners, you probably will never see that because we edit our podcast post-production. But Chima definitely stayed on a little bit longer because we went through some technology issues, and that's just one of the things that you get into sometimes when you run a podcast that is dependent on internet in order to work. So really appreciate you being willing to go a little bit of extra time to talk with us. Pretty awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jacob, for being patient.
Yep. And for our audience, we have 2 episodes left into the season before Jeff and I kind of sail off into the sunset for the summer before we launch season 4. Those episodes are going to be awesome. So we're talking next week to Dawn Anderson. And then our finale is going to be Azim Ahmad, Mr. Azim Digital. That's who you know him as himself. So he's going to be coming on for our finale. Those episodes are going to be awesome. And as everybody probably knows, we record on Fridays, release early in the week the following week. So, if you're listening to this, have an excellent week.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Jacob. And thank you to everyone who has listened to this really long ass podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Page 2 podcast. If you'd like to find out more about the show or listen to new episodes, visit us at page2podcast.fm. That's page, the number 2, podcast.fm. Our episodes are also available on a number of other platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Breaker, Deezer, Overcast, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. Additionally, you can also listen and watch our show on our YouTube channel or follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. If you'd like to get in touch with us, contact us at thepage2podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, happy optimizing.